This week, Ben sits down in the guest chair and tells me all about his derailed homebrew campaign. We'll delve into the lore of his world and the stories found within. If you explore Estoroth, now's the time to turn off this episode. Welcome to We Speak Common.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the D&D podcast for everyone, because here we speak common. It gets cheesier every single week, but I love it. This is the podcast brought to you in partnership with the Dice Dungeon, who are your one-stop shop for D&D goods in the UK. They of course ship worldwide, but they are a UK company and we are a primarily UK-based podcast. So that's how the partnership got about, if you didn't know. They were your one-stop shop for beautiful, amazing dice, and they still are that, but now you can get yourself lots of different products through Dice Dungeon. Things like official licensed Wizards of the Coast books, for example. Why not head over there and pre-order your copy of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft in both the standard and limited edition covers. You can also get a ton of different Gale Force 9 products, a whole other stuff too. So go and have a look. Their catalogue is continuing to grow. And of course, if you use the code We Speak Common at checkout, you get 10% off. That's not just dice, that's anything in your basket. So go and have a look and make sure you've got that book in your basket ready to go. We're also brought to you in partnership with Describe, who are the one-stop shop for finely crafted box text to fit into your own D&D campaign. If you are a DM who loves to create encounters and build adventures, but doesn't quite like getting creative in describing, then Describe is the place for you. It's spelled dscryb.com. And it is offering over 15,000 scenes of places, monsters, spells, and of course that collection continues to grow, written by fantastic creative writers. You can go and have a look at their membership options. It's a subscription platform, but of course there are a bunch of free ones for you to look at too. If you decide to subscribe, you can use the code COMMON at checkout to save 10% off every single month that you are a member. If you want links to both of those wonderful partners, they're in the description of the episode below. And of course, I would be amiss to forget that I need to say a big thank you to the patrons of the show. There are a bunch of guys and girls who every month give me a little bit of cash to say, you know what, well done, this is a great show, we really love it. And in turn, they get a bunch of extra content, like a private Discord server where we all have a wonderful chat and hang out in voice chats and talk about D&D and life in general, as well as homebrew rule sets that I release as and when I've put them together. The latest one was a book full of items called Aramin's Tome of Artifacts, which you can go and grab on the Patreon right now, just by supporting the show. Again, links in the description below. Blimey, that was a long and hectic ad read. Let's get into this week's episode. It is Table Fables, and I am joined yet again by my friend and babby DM, Sam.
It's me. I'm back.
Back again. Tell a friend. Samuel's back. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing grand, Ben. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I've realised I've just come up into the studio and there's suddenly a big grey cloud and it started raining, so I need to switch the light on. So I'm going to do that in a sec. But yeah, I'm good. I've been spending the last every waking moment thinking about an upcoming D&D game. So that's exciting. Thinking about different things to do in different settings and random tables and encounters and story beats and box text. It's a fun place to be.
It sounds very exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting. I'm just going to switch this light on so I can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really hyped for that. What have you been working
on? So after we had that little chat about my campaign, I basically just did a load of homework. I just went and sat down for a couple of hours, deciding what the hell I was going to do. And yeah, we vibe now because I've got a great sort of plot that I can run off of with flow charts and everything.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, of course, you're alluding to the bonus episode that we did, 3 weeks ago? No. 2 weeks ago? It was a while ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a little while ago.
So I'm glad that you got a lot out of that, and actually we got some really good feedback on that episode. I was compared to the the Gordon Ramsay of D&D campaigns, coming in and fixing up your broken kitchen, and the Mary Kondo. So I'm really happy with that, and that is why you are here again today. Oh, I'm getting a phone call during the podcast. That's not professional.
Oops.
Hang on. It's my girlfriend. Hang on. Phoebe, welcome to the podcast. How can I help you?
Oh no, you're recording a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I do it every week, dear. Oh, I know.
It's just started hailing.
It's not. It's spring. How is it hailing?
It's hailing, and you said you would pick me up if it was horrible, and it's pretty horrible.
It's pretty sunny over here for me. I don't know what she's on about.
Sam's laughing at you.
For a bit. Oh my god, it's actually proper hailing. Like, it's not hailing at home. Are you for real?
No, it's not. Go. It's just started raining. Go in Morrison's. Have a little. This show is not sponsored by Morrison's. Other supermarkets are available. Go and have a wander around Morrison's. I don't know. Maybe buy us some treats and then walk when it's not raining.
Oh my god, can you hear the hail?
I can hear the wind.
It's hail.
Okay, well, hide in the shop until it stops, alright?
Okay.
Alright, love
You're
you.
not gonna come and
What a
get me then?
quote.
No, I'm not going to come and get you. No.
Great, thanks.
Love
I know you
you.
said you would.
No, I didn't. I
Right,
didn't promise.
Oh, no.
Okay, alright, okay.
I
Love you, bye.
Bye.
I'm an awful boyfriend.
D&D power couple.
There you go, that's what's going on in my life. I'm now going to get...
This is now the most unique episode ever. Love
It's
it.
Yeah, because if an episode doesn't come out next week, you know what's happened.
Yeah. Well,
You know, I've disappeared. Anyway, what were we saying? I'm actually going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb in case she tries to ring me again because I'm that good of a boyfriend. So we've taken what we did in that conversation with you and trying to fix your campaign, and I have pulled out the old homebrew campaign that I was running for Joe. If you're a long listener of the show, Joe amongst other people as well, Phoebe was in it, Wesley, James, a lot of the people you've heard on this show over the past couple of months. But if you've heard the podcast from way back, a couple of years ago, Joe would talk about his character Galahad a lot, and this is the campaign that Galahad was in. And I thought we could do a reversal. The tables have turned, where I tell you about my failing campaign and you help me fix it.
where the failing restaurant tells Gordon Ramsay how to do it.
Yeah, that always works. Isn't it? It's great. It's like the charity special.
Yeah.
So let me set the scene for you a little bit. This campaign is set in a homebrew continent. It's not a world, it's just a continent. And the idea was that I could put it in any world if I wanted to. And I could have it as part of like a distant continent of the Forgotten Realms. The continent is called Estoroth. And I created a small document with... I've got a little map. And it's kind of split in half. So at the top you have one area, and at the bottom you've got another. And I haven't looked at this document for a long time, so I need to go like through it again. And I think some of the names changed when after I made this and when I started running it. So here is the paragraph or two of the opening to set the scene. So Estoroth is a continent swimming in civil unrest, a temperate world abundant with arching mountains, rolling valleys. Their alliances bear down over independence, races look at one another with wary gazes, whilst men and women prepare for the next convergence of the realms. Estoroth is a world on the verge of change. Whether it will succumb to the Rector's questionable rule in the name of peace or remain defiant to the Council is up to you and the roll of the dice. It's an open world. It'll do... as you do, you'll hear things, as you roam, you'll hear things that happen up and down the continent. What you get mixed up in, who you ally with, and what enemies you make is down to the decisions you'll make at the table. It's not all fun and games, but it's not all doom and gloom either. The idea is that it's meant to feel like a real world, a place where there are problems and there are silver linings. There's good and evil, but more importantly, the grey area in between. You're a group of adventurers that have been travelling together for the past year and a half, and you will have different bits of knowledge about Estoroth that you will learn throughout the campaign, as well as different friends, families, backgrounds, and sometimes goals. But for whatever reason, you five have found each other and have created a bond that feels right. You work well together and have already stirred up a small fuss in some of the smaller towns. So,
I
that was
really
kind
like
of...
that. I won't
Yeah,
lie. Like starting off strong with, the party knowing each other, Because I've always, the way I've seen it be done is that like characters wouldn't know each other, but I do appreciate those moments when you've got a party that already know each other, because then you don't have to go through that like awkward stage.
So we also started with them at level 5 as well. So
Oh,
I said
that's
to
good
them,
to hear as well.
I said, come up with, like, write your characters together, write your history. You are small scale adventurers already.
Okay.
And they did that. They were quite good at that. And the opening quest was in the small market town of Windshire, and they had to. It was like a one shot. It kind of turned into more than a one shot adventure that I'd got from DM's Guild and edited, called Potions 11.
Potions 11. Oh,
obviously is a riff on Ocean's
Yeah.
11. And they had a lot of fun with that, and then it went on into that more open world campaign. So we had, now I'm going to forget all of the characters. We had Galahad, who was Joe's paladin. We had Luna, that was Phoebe's druid. Wesley was playing, I don't know, I think Sorcerer and Azamar. And then we had Ayrton, who was playing a ranger, and James, who I can't for the life of me remember what they were playing.
I love hearing people play rangers. Oh, that makes
And
my day.
with each of them, I built backstories for them. So Galahad came from the Artoris family, who are mentioned in Ahriman's Tome of Artifacts, if you want to go and have a hunt for that. And he was basically out training with his brother one day. His brother was attacked and killed, but his stepmother, like the evil stepmom, who was who married into the family, the dad was like the mayor of the town, the city, was basically convinced that Galahad killed his brother, and he was banished and told to never come back, or they'll take his head, kind of thing. So he's like a disgraced paladin. You had Wesley, who, as I don't know if he was a sorcerer or a wizard. He might have been a wizard. He played a female character who was an Azamar, whose Deva was given to them. They were bonded together to look after this ancient artifact that had been handed down through their family line. But Wesley character had renounced that because they didn't agree with the directions the Deva went in. So the Deva wanted to, like, if the Deva wanted to take Wesley's character away with the stone to protect it, whereas Wesley would want to go and help people in danger. And so they were a fallen Azamar. They disconnected from that Deva. Those were the most prominent backstories. Luna, who was Phoebe's druid, was from a group of sort of wandering people. They lived in a forest not too far from Enton's family, and for Enton's lineage, which lived in kind of like a tree village in the same forest. And it transpired that Phoebe's character knew Enton's character's brother, which came out in the game at one point when they arrived at this place, and Ayrton was like, "This is my home, welcome," and they were like, "I know you," and it was quite interesting and sort of happened over time. And she had a connection with who I guess we could call like the Wild Mother, if you want a kind of an idea of what the god was, who was training her or using her to basically groom her into a position to take over eventually. Not that she really knew that to begin with.
Yeah.
And then Ayrton's sort of elven tribe were all about undergoing. They had a very ritualistic life. They all underwent like a proving kind of moment of. It was called. I think he called it the proving. We haven't played this for years at this point. They had to prove that they were prove that they were good enough. They went through these trials, kind of like the trial of grasses, but without concoctions. And I think the inspiration was Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, to be this kind of I'm a man now. I can go, I can leave, and I can adventure, and I can bring back things to the tribe. So that, and they're very separated from the rest of the established world. They lived a very sort of nomadic life in their town, like they were just disconnected from it all. But yeah, so those were the characters. Now, the setup of the world is that there is this one form called the Rector's Alliance. The Rector is the ruler; they're like the king. Then you have the Muri, which was the partner of the Rector. The Archmages, who are the counselor to the Rector, and the Masked Lords. The Masked Lords, who are council members, who tend to be the mayor's right-hand men or women of each of the big cities. And then you had the Vanguard, which are like the force that protects the Rector in the city and the Alliance. And the Van Muri, which is the council of people that don't really do anything. They're the old wives and partners or men, the husbands of the Rector, because the Rector can be male or female. So the Rector's Alliance is an alliance that came together, pulling most of, if not all of the cities together in one alliance. There is one city in the south which is still against that alliance because they have a very jaded view on the world. They're a little bit racist. Like they look after their own and they don't care about anyone else. So you have, let me look at the actual map, and I think some of the names changed. You have Riverton, which was the main city of the Rector, Parstow, Narpuck, which is where Galahad was from.
That's such a great town name. I love it.
Narpuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big city, and it's got a big windmill in the center, which you can see from miles and miles away because it's it's a flat hillock land, and it powers the whole city.
That's sick.
You've got so Seafront, which is the port city and the big trading hub. Landrift, which is the only capital outside of the Alliance and is basically like a safe place to anybody. Tijaris, which was it's a landlocked city that's shadowed on the southwest by tall mountains. Narpuck, which is surrounded by the hills. Parstow, which is a mountainous range in the northeast. And that is all of them. And then apart from that, so I plotted out those main cities, and then I plotted out the main plots and some side quests and some small side places, some small villages that you can go to. For example, we have a list of city-states: Littleport, Tarvin's Fist, Dormer's Gate, Ismarith, Riftwater Bay, Tumbleweed Nook, Rest. There's a place just called Rest. Drifton, Hilltown, Moor Park, Nyajay, I think that's how I meant to pronounce that. Nyanji, I don't know. I can't remember. And Windshire. So I had these big cities and these small city-states, and most of those city-states were in the south with Landrift, and they kind of made up the opposition to the Rector's Alliance, because up in the north it was mainly big cities with small towns. There's also Dragontooth Point, which is an island off of the southwestern coast where all of the dragons are locked away. There is...
Oh, yes. I've heard about this one. Yeah.
There is Mirror Lake, which is a big lake. There's Cragmore Hold, which is an abandoned... it was an abandoned stronghold on a tower off of the northeastern coast near Seafront, which was actually an offshoot of Candlekeep. I decided to set it in Faerun.
Oh.
And then a place called the Tower Over the Deep, which is an old abandoned tower. So this is the setting, right? And I've got all this planned out, and I'm like, right, I like this, I'm happy with this. My issue was the plot. So
it's sort of the same issue that I had. Like, I had the setting, I had everything, just the plot. Yeah. So
I did some work around the thing that made this world different, and that was the convergence. So the calendar is an alphabetical system with a numerical value. This is going to be really hard to...
This was the thing that this is the conversation that we first talked about when I first met you.
Mm-hmm.
You talked to me about the convergence, and so is it like a situation where all of the planes sort of converge and come together?
So here's what I've got written under calendar in this document. Every 26th year is a year of convergence, where it is believed that the veils of the planes are so close together that you can travel, touch, and party with other worlds, is what I've put here. It takes place on the final 12th month of year Z before the calendar resets. So every month is 28 days long, 1 week is 7 days, a year has 13 months. So it's here's an example of how the calendar would work. You would have year 1A till year 1AZ. So you'd have year 1A, year 1AB, year A. Let me start again. Year 1A, year 1B, year 1C, year 1D. Then it would go to year 2A, year 2B, year 2C, and it would go on like that. And it's broken down in numerical Roman numerals with alphabetical letters. So the year that the game was set was the 26th year of the 46th convergence. So this is where it got a bit convoluted, and I would probably have to rework this a little bit. But so, for example, year VA is the start of year 103. Year XA, so 10A, is the start of year 260.
Okay.
So in the timeline of the game, it starts year XLVIZ. There's 6 months until the end of the year at session 1. And that after those 6 months, that is where the very first convergence in the campaign that the characters would see as players would see as characters, would happen. The convergence basically just means that you can find areas in the world where you can travel through the planes a lot easier, and it makes planar travel a lot easier. That's normal.
I like that, yeah.
And so kind of like a New Year celebration, no, actually it's more like a millennial celebration. There would be a big party, like, oh, it's the convergence, like, here's the superstitions, put up your Christmas tree. It'd be like that kind of thing.
Big holiday.
Yeah. But the difference was that this time something was going wrong. Something was changing the way the convergence worked, and different parts of different realms were being dragged into Estoroth.
Oh.
So you had rifts that were opening up, and I think the party they heard of one of them, and they saw one with their own eyes. And they're like these big, discoloured lightning portals that look through into other realms, and things were pulling their way through them. And if you were in proximity to a rift, magic wouldn't work right. You'd get a kind of wild magic reaction when you cast spells.
Interesting.
And I had my own wild magic table. But then there was also things like the party were sent to go and investigate something at a dwarven stronghold in a mountain, where the mine that they hadn't finished, like they were mining and they had to stop because they broke through the wall of the mine, the stone, and it was suddenly sand and sandstone, and it didn't make sense. So the parties went in and investigate, and they found at the inside of a Egyptian-esque mummy tomb, which had a mummy lord in it. And they had this whole dungeon crawl inside this very not setting-specific dungeon, because the convergence pulled it in and just dropped it in place.
That's actually like a really great thing about that holiday, that situation, is that you can just plop it anywhere. Mm-hmm. I like that.
So
I really like that.
So that's the story reason why it's there. The DM reason is that I was in a position where I had all of these things I wanted to do, but they didn't all fit any game I was playing. So I was like, right, I need a reason to be able to just drop any random monster and any random adventure idea or any location that I want into this game and make it feel natural, so that I can keep surprising the players and give them new things and have a reason for it being that way, right?
They get a taste of everything as well, yeah.
Exactly. So on paper, I think that sounds like a great idea. In the execution is where I had the issues. So let me give you a bit of an idea about how the story was going. The players were moving from town to town. Eventually they went to a city, and they were meeting people, and they were learning things. They found out that there was a rebellion going up against the Rector's Alliance that was based in Landrift, the city that was not part of the Alliance. They began to find out that the Alliance was a little bit dodge, but they couldn't work out why. They had their own backstories going on. and they were trying to follow those, but they also weren't quite sure of what the main plot direction was, because I had kind of like 3 different directions. I had 3 plot lines. So my issue was that I'd set up all these things, but the players were feeling like a little bit directionless, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of the same issue that I had, in the sense of like there are plot points there. It's just like putting them in the direction of where they can follow one.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pull out my small little black book and go to my flowcharts for... I've just realised we've been talking about this for ages, and I didn't say that if you play an Estoroth, you shouldn't be listening to this, but oh well.
Whoops.
I made flowcharts for the stories. So the 2 I've got in here, I have the Dragon storyline and I have the Alliance storyline. So basically, the Alliance flowchart starts off with, do they believe in the Alliance? So I've put Alliance for the win, ? If yes, do they help take over the outsiders? Do they do it in a big battle, or do they do it in stealth? If they do that successfully, how does the world change? The Alliance begins to rule with unity, and it brings all of the continent together, but there's oppression. So they then so the idea is that they then have to deal with that consequence of them bringing the world under one banner, but having to like then work out whether they agreed with the oppression that was there. If they didn't succeed in trying to take over the outsiders, there would be a big war, and they'd start a war. If they're not with the Alliance, do they decide to free the people who are inside it, which is then like, okay, how do they do that? Do they help the Rector to see the error of his ways? What happens? Do they then get into a fight against the Rector on the side of the rebellion, or do they go and drop into a war, or do they go and try and kill the Rector? If they kill the Rector, there's anarchy but freedom. But if they don't kill the Rector, can they convince him to leave this power that was corrupting him? So that was the Alliance storyline, and it was all about like getting from A to B and seeing like how they dealt with their consequences of their actions. The Dragon storyline.
That sounds really like... I like that. That sounds really interesting and exciting to play.
So the Dragon storyline was that the dragons have been years ago, and it was linked in with Joe's family history. The gods banished the dragons from the realm because they were trying to take over. They were trying to rule the world, and it wasn't their world to rule, and all this kind of stuff. So the dragons got banished to Dragontooth Point. Let me just find this the note on this area. I have it somewhere.
Is this the same place that's talked about in the How to Do Dragons episode?
No, but we will talk about that, because that is linked to this campaign. So Dragontooth Point is an island where all the dragons have been banished to, stuck there through powerful magic, and it's also where there's a certain NPC who is a dragonborn. We'll get into that in a minute. So the idea is that if they find the dragons, if they find out where they are, and they find out about this certain NPC, and they find out about their plight, they decide, do we want to help him or do we want to fight him? And then that leads to, do the dragons come back in a good way and they are peaceful in the world, or do they come back in anger and in revenge? If they didn't find out about the dragons, the idea was that the seals on Dragontooth Point were corroding over time, and sightings were beginning to happen. So at the very start of the adventure, the heroes were hearing about sightings of giant winged creatures, but they didn't know where they were. They've never seen a dragon. They've heard of them. They've never seen one. So it made dragons very kind of fantastical again.
And elusive. And
exactly.
And
that's
when... excited.
Later on in the campaign, they ended up following the trail of a blue dragon and fighting it. So that did happen, and that's what the How to Run Dragon episode is about, that encounter that I built. So those were the 2 storylines, but then at the same time I had all of the players trying to feed into their own personal storylines. So we had Joe trying to write his name, and he found out that his mother was the one that tried to kill him and not his brother, and the assassin got the wrong person. At the same time, Wesley's great-grandfather dies and hands the stone to Wesley. We had this whole session where they were they were confronted by a faceless golem, like a skin face golem, who gave a message. I've actually got a note on it here. The quest is called In the Event of My Death. Flesh golem with a smooth face shifts to a familiar face for Wesley. It's his grandfather. Delivers a message that is a programmed message in the event of their death. An ancient enemy has slain the ancestor, and if the family member doesn't help, the family bloodline could be doomed, etc., etc., etc. So the idea is that they went to the funeral. It was a very moving session because they went to an actual funeral. They met Wesley's family, who were very antagonistic to Wesley's character, and Wesley, they had to go down into the tomb. There was a mind flayer. Joe had his brain in. Again, there was, Wesley retrieves the family artifact, the Stone of Archon, and that really started their quest line of like, okay, how do I take on this burden that I tried to get rid of originally that now has fallen back to me. And this is where the spoilers start coming in if you're a player in this game. The antagonist of kind of the whole overarching story, which, the dragon storyline's happening, the Rector's Alliance storyline is happening, the main bad guy is Wesley's Deva, who...
Oh, shit.
When they disconnected, the Deva decided that she hated Wesley's character, because the Deva basically was set to become a full-on god, basically get a promotion, because in this universe, gods are they're just granted power, so anyone can become a god if they get to that point. And so Wesley's Deva was basically like, this is your test, prove that you can protect this ancient artifact, which, by the way, side note, the Stone of Archon has the ability to remove someone from the timeline.
Which is just unbelievable.
Just put a pin in that. That's problematic in itself, but let's just put a pin in that. We'll get to that later. So she wanted to get the stone, because she'd been disgraced by Wesley, get the stone, use it to remove Wesley from the timeline, thus reset everything that had gone wrong, and relearn and get her new chance to become a higher being again. So Wesley fulfills their character destiny by getting the stone and making it their burden, and then the players start getting randomly attacked and followed by cultists who dress in red, who are following the Deva, who's started to create their own kind of form of religion, because they're looking for this power to become this higher being. And the whole kind of climactic point that I was trying to build to is that the characters would eventually learn this and would have to work out how they were going to fight and put a stop to this powerful being's ascendance. And there was a whole potential of this Deva working with an even darker higher being that was whispering in their ear and basically being like, I can get you your power, do these things, get your power, and then in return free me. And that was going to be Tharizdun, the Chained Oblivion.
Yes, okay.
So that's kind of it. The last, a couple of things I just want to touch on before we go into the problems and how I would fix them now, and your thoughts on that, is that the Rector's Alliance, basically, there was a Rector, and he died, and his son was put into power. So the current Rector in the world is very, very young, and he is being manipulated by the Archmage of the Council of the town, the city of the Rector, and he is he is being manipulated by this Archmage who is saying, do this, do this, do this, whose school was enchantment and moved into necromancy because he wanted to bring back and find a way to bring back a person in a true form rather than just a zombie, the Rector's mother, because he was secretly in love with her. And so that's why, you hear rumors of people going missing in the streets, and it kind of leads into that oppression and that racism and that the class difference. They're always poor homeless people that are going missing. So when they get to Riverton, which they never got to in the end, they'd see that it was a very strange place, and there's a lot of missing people and boogeymen stories and things, and it's actually the man in charge manipulating the young Rector to experiment on them to bring back the perfect dead, basically. So that was going on. in the Erectors Alliance, and I think I actually have. So the Masked Lords are appointed by people from each settlement under the Erectors Alliance that come together to pass laws, judgments, and aid the Rector. They're masked so that each Lord has his or her life and identity kept separate from the danger of power. Basically, copied the Masked Lords from Waterdeep. The Rector, with the assistance of the Mages' Council, select a Masked Lord from each settlement. Rector, a young boy, 15, whose father was the previous Rector and has taken his place when his father was found dead. The current Rector is the apprentice of the Archmage of Riverton, an enchanter that powers the Alliance with powerful magical items. So then the Archmages were as follows. You had Darvish Vesk, the enchanter, who is a male human, who is the bad guy, basically. You had Velpor Marduk, the navigator, a female human conjurer, who is from Seafront, but is often out on diplomatic missions, connecting with other continents across the world. Archie Ekarai, the watchful, who is a gnome. He has a very long trailing beard that follows him along the floor. He is a diviner and an abjurer, and he likes to manipulate people to do his biddings, but he does it in fun ways, like he plays tricks on them. And he's in Pathstow. Jupiter Calasect is the keeper. She is a female half-elf. She's the transmuter. She's in Landrift. Dalthane Paltor, the unrivaled, is a male dwarf. He is an invoker, and he was a close connection to Galahad, kind of like a pseudo-father. Mikey Banathor, the mirthful. He is a young half-elven male. He's the illusionist, and he has a favourite joke shop in Tajaris. Then you have Abandoned, and it's cut out of all history. There once was another archmage known as Castan the Old, and this was back when necromancy was a school of magic that was allowed to be studied. Formerly, Castan the Undead. He is a lich, dragonborn, whose tower is long abandoned, tower over the deep, and is currently trapped on Dragontooth Point, acting as a kind of king and figurehead to the dragons, because you've not only got red and green and blue dragons, but you've got metallic dragons there too, and so there's a lot of infighting on Dragontooth Point. And if the characters ever got to him, and they could, there was a character to get them to him. His plight was that he wanted dragons to have their place in the world again, and not to be trapped in this boiling pot of like cesspit of like violence, yeah. And so the magic hire worked. You had the archmages, who are the leaders of the council and the protectors of magic. They are the strongest magic users in the continent. Excuse me. Their apprentices, they would have students. They were the next in line for the council. They'd only have one or two at a time, and they'd be years apart. They had teachers and scribes that were not great enough to learn from the archmages, but they started to teach the next generation. The underlings, who are the young students of magic, and then the rags, who are the enforcing body and like a police force that punishes illegal magic. And that was an idea, they're basically the wizard cops, that I put a pin in because there was a potential for the game to be fast forwarded into the future, to see what the future of the realm looked like, which was an idea I had that I hadn't used, so I wrote them out for an evolution of what the magic hire would be if that ever happened.
I see.
Okay, are you still with me?
I am. There's a lot.
I did a lot of world building, which is why Joe wants me to rework this and make it a campaign and finish it. So,
because it would be like a massive shame. From what I can hear, it would be a massive shame.
I mean, I could run any campaign in this world now. Like, I know it
exactly.
Well.
That's why it seems like the best tool for like running the campaigns you want to run, but still keeping them within one sort of realm.
So, at the back of, I've just found the back of this page, a bit on Galahad. Who killed his brother and why? His mother's identity. So here's the thing. So Joe, if you're listening to this, now you need to switch off. Joe doesn't know this. Galahad had a connection with the gods, but it was a struggle connection. He was often trying to find his place, and when he died and was brought back, he was trying to understand why the gods have this power, and if they do, why don't they make the world a better place, and all this kind of stuff, yeah? It would come to pass through the connection between Joe and Wesley's character, which was already there because Wesley's lover / best friend / companion was tricked into killing Joe's brother. And there was a big moment where they had to let him go, and Wesley had to decide whether he would use the stone to remove him from time or kill him, let Joe kill him in a sacrifice, basically in redemption, which would have been fun, because if Wesley had removed him from the timeline, the whole campaign would change.
Yeah, literally.
But it would come to pass that... let me read what I've written. Due to his upbringing in the house of his stepmother, Galahad never knew who his mother was. She gave him up after childbirth, and he doesn't even know if she's dead or alive somewhere out in the world. This was something that Joe wrote, and I reworded it for myself. Kind of like Jon Snow-esque kind of child. She, in fact, was a nomadic person, an agent of the gods. And Azamar, Joe's character, was a human, right? She had never revealed this to anyone, and still hasn't to this day, because while religion and worship can be found in Estoroth, it is often linked to the belief that a god is no better than a man. They have just lived longer and have gained more power. As an Azamar, she knew that even if it was true, it's good to be friends with the power than to snark at it and think that you can do better, which is exactly the opposite of Wesley's beliefs as an Azamar. She travelled to try and find people that would help her spread peace and the helping hand of an otherworldly power. That was her mission. This is where Galahad gets his more arcane power from, and his devoted, his not arcane, I've written it wrong there, the godly power. He just doesn't know it. So in the future, it was going to come to pass, and I was going to reveal to Joe that he had been an Azamar the whole time and didn't know.
That would have been awesome.
Yes, so his character sheet would have changed. Cool. Let's take a break here to say that none of this would have been possible without some really good dice. And you can get some really good dice from the Dice Dungeon. What? How believable is that? If you use the code We Speak Common at checkout on the Dice Dungeon on some of their beautiful brand new sets, the Golden Age is here, then you get 10% off and you help the show out as well. But while you're checking out those dice, don't forget that Dice Dungeon has recently expanded their stock and is now offering Wizards of the Coast published materials. Ravenloft, I have already pre-ordered mine with them, and things like spell cards and miniatures and stuff that Gale Force 9 do as well. So go and have a look. They are now more than just your wonderful dice supplier, and have a ton of extra stuff for you to go and grab with that 10% off. Go on.
I've heard that this might just be speculation.
Oh, hang on. What don't get me in trouble here, Sam.
No. I'm not going to get you in trouble. Don't worry. I've heard though that if you use the code, they're cheaper than on Amazon, slightly.
Oh, you saucy bugger. Yes, so this is true. As you know, we like to support our friendly local game stores, and Dice Dungeon is basically a friendly local game store, which is why they get access to things like the limited edition covers, which you can't get on Amazon, which is a nice bonus that you get by going to a friendly local game store. The reason that those stores get those, other than Amazon, is that Amazon have the ability to market their things a lot lower than other stores. So using the We Speak Common code does in fact actually get you down and below that level, as if you were getting it at a cheaper price by going to a big, awful conglomerate corporation like Amazon. So support your friendly local game stores, but in this particular instance, support Dice Dungeon, because they're really nice guys. The other thing that would really help in recreating this amazing campaign is a load of box text already written for me, because then the work is already done. Describe is the best place for that. Spelled DSCRYB. Describe.com is a place that offers over 15,000 scenes of monsters, places, spells, and creatures, magic, all that kind of stuff, written out by amazing creative writers who do this stuff for a living. So it's really well written. It's box text that would fit perfectly to any campaign you are running right now. There's tons of 3 scenes on the websites that you can go and read right now. Plus, there's an even bigger collection that continues to grow if you get a subscription membership, which you can have 10% off using the code COMMON when you check out. And that discount applies every single month of the subscription, not just the first one. So go and have a look, check it out. It's a wonderful little service.
I was just reading the Young Gold Dragon entry that they have, and that is such a beautiful description for such a powerful creature.
Honestly, so I've been doing a lot of work on a secret project for the future and doing a lot of box text, and I did have a look and go through and find some bits and bobs that would fit really well, and some bits and bobs that gave me some inspiration for my own writing. So it's a really, really good service. So I have found that's just ignore the fact that my phone has gone off twice during this episode, Sam. That's really unprofessional of me. I have found the page that lists out the main plots and the side plots. Would you like to hear them?
I would. We need to work out how to get these together.
Okay. Main plots. Rector's advisor, trying to learn Necro to bring back lost love, using people to experiment on. Oppression. Eventually, over time, laws will get worse. More and more people go missing. He gets desperate as he runs out of time to bring her back to a perfect state. Zombie problem, eventually, is the notes I've written.
Oh, I love a zombie problem.
Yeah, I do too. Then I've got Dragonborn Lich and the Dragons. I've got asterisks, intro to adventure line above.
Double undead problem.
Don't know what that is.
You've got Dragonborn Lich and
So this
this
says...
other dude.
So some of these notes are slightly wrong, and I changed them as I was going. So I think in this sense, the Dragonborn Lich started off as a bad guy, but I developed it to be more of a grey area. Like, he wanted a good thing, but he would have to do a potentially bad thing of releasing the dragons to get it. So amassing power, trying to bring all dragons together. So I've put to attack mainland and reclaim their land. I changed that. He wasn't doing that. He just wanted their home back. He wanted to be part of the world again. If not stopped, potentially the whole of the alliance will cripple and break. That's if a war broke out between the dragons because they weren't allowed back in. They want to come back in peacefully, but if they're not allowed to come back in peacefully, they would attack. Especially if the bad advisor isn't stopped, as he'll be too focused on his plans, so they link together. The cities could be destroyed, pushing the laws of the land back to a reset. I've got main adventure. Party meets Volo. I don't know why I've got that there, but they did. Who asks them to descend beneath... Oh, yes, I remember what this is. Okay. Party meets Volo and asks them to descend beneath an abandoned mage tower up north. The tower above the deep, whatever I called it. To learn more about illithids. Turns out that Volo is a fake, and they find the real Volo underground. He tells them he was captured when researching the illithids, and they use him to lure adventurers down and feast on their minds. Volo wants to create... Oh god, bad language. Bad spelling. Volo warns of a creature down here that he only knows the name of and that the illithids are afraid of. Turns out to be a beholder, which I did shadow. Party must escape with their lives with Volo, having destroyed the illithid nest or not. Reward, Volo partnership plus copies of his book. The start of a deck of many things. Maybe the Taroka deck variant. Minor adventure, Shia LaBeouf. Yes, Shia LaBeouf. Party find a village with tons of missing people posters on the board. They all went missing in a nearby forest. It turns out that it wasn't a monster. The monster was the human all along because it was the actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf, which I have written about before. If you don't know actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf, yeah.
It was so strong.
If you don't know actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf, go and Google it, listen to the song, it's hilarious. There's a stat block out there. I did a whole encounter around it, and it was kind of a joke, but I built it in a way that it wasn't. It was tense, it was scary, and I used lines from the songs, and eventually one of the players, I think James, went, "I know what's going on here," and I was like, good. And they really enjoyed it. It was a really fantastic little side adventure. The reward was that the town loved them. They gave them a house, which became a headquarters, which they never used. But there you go. That was a really fun one, and it actually ended up being a driver for character development because the players were like, it's not always monsters. Sometimes men and women are just monsters.
Yeah.
I've got polymorphed dragon heist. Party doesn't know that they are a dragon, sends them off to steal from another polymorph dragon who reveals their form and gets them to steal from the other dragon. Party gets stuck between the two, which could just be interesting. Wouldn't work in this setting now that I've done all the lore on the dragon, so I don't know what I was thinking. Deck of many things. Rumours are circulating that someone, TBD, is asking about a deck of many things, trying to locate all of the cards to complete the deck. They're looking for only a few more cards that they have tracked down to Estoroth. Should they get the deck completed, who knows what power they could have. Are they good, bad, what are their intentions? If the party players investigate, they may team up with a stranger or fight them for the deck. Their choice to pull from it and scatter the cards or bury it and hide it away.
It's the Daver. The Daver's looking for the deck.
Daver's looking for everything. I changed that. I actually had that there was a deck of many things scattered in many different places around all of Estoroth, and the players actually missed like a good chunk of the deck by like mere meters. It was annoying. It was really annoying. I've also got at the bottom down here Ballaroo, the Dragonborn blue sorcerer. Don't know what that is, but there you go.
That's a key plot point. That's where it all went wrong.
On the next page, I have Wesdaver becomes the next god, and his venge also tracks him down to make life a living hell. Yeah. The Ring of Grammarium, the Ring of Future Luck, the Bag of Endless Chickens, which are just magic items.
I love it.
They're just titles. The Ring of Grammarium allows you to change one letter in the name of the spell, thus changing the effect of the spell.
Firefall.
Yep. This is a good one. Bannon Dunkentine. I'll let you guess who the inspiration for that is. The Scottish dragon hunter invites players on a quest to hunt a white dragon with him, possibly in Dragontooth Point. This is how they were going to get to Dragontooth Point and find this storyline a bit more. Needs support as it's dragon territory. Doesn't know that it will link up to finding the Dragonborn Lich. Use the saved post on white dragons to show his knowledge. I saved a post somewhere that had a load of stuff on dragons. Location. I've put location dash wherever you want, Ben. And then it says in quotations, I'm guessing this was his voice in a Scottish accent. You've got to be one of two things to be a dragon hunter, lad: brave or mental. And I'll tell you one thing for free: I ain't brave.
I love it.
And then the final thing I have on this page is the starting of a adventure contract which the party wrote up with their house gremlins in their hideout, which says, of adventurers, adventures, and their relation, responsibility, and requirements, contractual obligations, and terms to ensure the efficient trans-cooperation of associates, employees, contractors, and specialists in betwixt and therein of and with the company, ... So they had to write up a contract at one point, apparently.
That's beautiful.
I'm not going to go into all of this, but I've got I've got a list of all of the city-states, and some of them have quests. So, for example, Tumbleweed Nook, isolated, alone, separate from the rest of Estoroth. The road only leads to here. You're not going to Tumbleweed just to pass through. There's said to be a rather good market in town, which linked to a quest in my book, which is about a woman who trades secrets for goods. Drifton, closest to the forest in southeast, a festival is held beneath the moon here, which was another quest, Festival Beneath the Moon, where you would wear an animal mask, which would shift your head to be the animal head, and it would give you the senses of that animal. But it turns out that lycanthropes were attacking the city, and you'd have to, during the festival, find out who were actually lycanthropes and who weren't.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Hilltown, close to Landrift and on the crossroad. People here are going missing. That's the Shire Buff one. Windshire, that's the Potions 11. Tower over the Deep, other key locations. Old ruined abandoned mage tower of Caston. This tower descended deep into the ground, where not only a large illithid colony lives, but an ancient beholder too, that's trying to take over their elder brain. Mirror Lake, a secret lies beneath this lake, but what does it hold? Craglang Hold, which is I told you about, and Dragontooth Point.
It's got a really big mirror under it.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. So that's kind of the setting. So I feel like I've just spoken at you for like 50 minutes, but
yeah. But there's a lot to talk. There's a lot of like foundation that you need to show to kind of get an idea of this extremely unique world, because it's crazy.
There's also a river that, if you look at the map, was an unnatural flowing river, and it's because if you go to its source, it's actually a broken decanter of endless water that's constantly pouring out a river.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there was there's airships in this world, and the players used airships quite a lot. They travelled on airships to get to and from different areas of the continent.
We've got everything. We've got airships.
We got fake rivers. We got necromancy.
I love it. There's so much going on, though.
Yeah. So I think this is the thing, though. Like, it's like, to talk about it. Like, this is imbuing. Just talking about this is making me want to replay it, which is good, because that's what I need. Because
that's a great feeling.
I want that story to end, and I want to link it all together. But my issue is that I had these players who were focusing on their backstories, and were really tied into those, and I was giving them. But they were finding stuff out about their backstories and sort of growing as characters as they progressed the story of the overall continent, which was the wreck to the dragons and the convergence. The convergence being the main storyline, the fact that the Deva was breaking through. But they got to a point where they were feeling like they weren't really sure what was going on, because they were picking up clues and they were putting together that something's going on with the convergence. We know that it's not right. We keep getting attacked by cultists, so maybe that's got something to do with it. We've seen dragons, so maybe that's got something to do with it. And I think the problem is that I was putting in so many of these different things.
The clues, but they all sort of lead in different directions.
Yeah, and so they would get one clue and they'd think, oh, okay, so we've seen a dragon now, which means dragons must be breaking free from Dragontooth Point, which must mean that the dragons are using the convergence. But it didn't. The dragons weren't doing anything with the convergence. But because the players hadn't found that other piece of information, about what was going on with the convergence, they were trying to put all the clues that they had together without realizing that some of the puzzle pieces weren't fitting with the other puzzle pieces they had.
Yeah, they're trying to jam 3 puzzle pieces together at once.
Yeah, they think they're making one puzzle when in fact they're making 3, which come together into one puzzle. And so my struggle was having that those parallel running storylines happening at the same time and not crossing across each other and breaking the players' brains. And so,
but is there no way of them crossing across each other and actually being some part of
yes,
you've got the beings of the higher power. Why has that dragon, the place that is holding these dragons, suddenly started corroding?
So this is the thing. So this is back when I wrote this. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I also had days of the week: Moon Day, Fire Day, Water Day, Wood Day, Gold Day, Earth Day, Sunday. And I had a moon charter for when shooting stars would happen and the different moon phases. Anyway,
I love it.
Yeah, so I think back then I thought my opinion was I've got this sandbox world and the players are going to drive the story. Whereas what I said to you the other week when we talked about your sandbox game was that that's not necessarily the case. The players will drive where they're going and the players will make decisions that inform what happens in the story. But
you sort of need to
give direction.
Story in. Yeah,
exactly. So I had situations where I had one really bad session where we came away and the player was like, we have no idea what's going on. We don't know what to do. And I felt really deflated. And I think that's where I started to distance myself from this campaign because I felt like I'd failed, But the players were saying, no, we really like the world. We really like our characters. We're just not quite sure where to go or what to do. And so I started to try and give them more direction in the sense of Dalthane would get in contact with Galahad and say, I need you to go to this place and do this mission. And, someone else would get in contact and say, we've had a sighting of this here and we know that you were getting involved with it. Or the rebellion would get in contact with them and say, you helped us before, can you help us now? And I started to try and drive the story with these NPCs. But I don't know, it's tricky. I think if I was going to go back to it now, I'd have to reset where the campaign was where we left it and take all of those storylines and work out exactly, I'd have to say to the players, okay, here's what you know. We haven't played this in a while. Here's everything that you know. Here's what you remember.
Sort of like a retcon, but they've sort of played.
Yeah, it would be a retcon, but it also wouldn't be a retcon because at this point, who's going to remember everything that happened?
Exactly.
And I could use that opportunity to say, okay, here's what you know. Here are the characters that you have come into contact with, and they'd start to remember things. And I can use stuff like, okay, do a history check, or okay, do an insight check, or whatever, to give them new information that they need to reinform their direction as characters.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'd have to do. I'm just going to try and see if I have... Oh, I do, my Estoroth session plan. Let's see what happened in the last session that we played. So the last time I opened this was... Oh, damn, it won't tell me because I've just opened it today. So that's annoying. Here's what happened last session. The party heads into the Evergreen, which is a big forest. They cleared an old temple of the Nora, which was a tribe of elves. Ayrton was gifted his bow in full power combined with the Pearl of Apollo, which is an item in Tome of Artifacts. Ola, the mother and the son, connected with him. Oh yeah, he had a connection with his god. Isa has received messages from Joe's mother. Yes, yes, that's the thing. Isa, Wesley's character, started to have dreams as if she was connected to Adava again. And what it was Joe's mum, the Azamar, whose Deva had said to her, stuff's going on. Something bad's happening, and it's this god. Because they couldn't work out who was behind the convergence going wrong. That's what they were struggling with. They knew it was some red goddess because that's what they got from the cultists, but they didn't know who or why, and why they were being targeted. Because Wesley was very secretive about his stone, the Stone of Archon. As he is.
Typical Wes.
Yeah. So Joe's mum was using her Deva, was getting messages from her Deva and saying, these people need help, we need to go and work out what's going on here, something bad's happening. And so Isa was starting to get messages from this other Deva, and it was confusing her, because obviously she's disconnected from the gods. A Deva trying to connect to her to help. She's battling the former Deva of Isa in the heavens. They are heading towards the Tower of the Deep. So the party were heading to the tower to investigate what was going on underneath it, because they'd heard about this ancient tower, and Joe had a vision of something many-eyed lurking underneath, and they were intrigued, so they wanted to go and see what it was. Plot: they're heading to the Tower of the Deep. Things of note. Oh, this was a thing as well. The characters wanted to bring back their old characters from Curse of Strahd. So Van Richten, this is very topical for Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
On the nose.
When the characters visited the offshoot Cragmore Hold of Candlekeep, Van Richten was there, and they spoke with him, and he told them that he was there in the continent looking for ancient adventurers that he had worked with in the past, because an ancient evil had unsealed itself. Because in the Curse of Strahd campaign, their characters, Hofgar, James's character, the dwarf, had stayed behind with Van Richten to keep Strahd sealed in his crypt, right? But something had happened and they'd got out. So Hofgar is searching for the other members of that party with Van Richten. So they thought that Vidya, a drow, would be underneath the tower because it connects to the Underdark. Lorid, the rogue, would be in Pathstow attempting to open a store and occasionally stealing. And Hofgar is out there looking for them to say, we need to go back. So it was going to be this fun crossover where all they had to do was get their old characters and say, you need to go back. And then maybe we could play that or do that in the future. Tower of the Deep notes. The tower is a crumbling mound, falling to time and weather. Inside, players can find a study in a living space, evidence on research of magic that holds Dragontooth Point, extensive Mind Flayer colony, Beholder, all this stuff. So there's tons of stuff.
Who is, just as a question, because I think it's a good question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
What is your sort of aim for the big bad of this campaign? Who do you expect that to be?
I just hit the microphone, sorry. The aim was for the big bad to be the Deva, working in conjunction with Tharizdun. So really, if the players got to level 20, which was kind of the idea originally, they'd be fighting Tharizdun. And along the way, they would have a storyline getting involved with the Alliance. They'd have a storyline getting involved with the Dragons, and that was. Do you see what I mean? Season 1 of the campaign is the Dragon story arc, and season 2 is the Rector's Alliance story arc, and then the ending is, oh my god, the person who's been plaguing us this whole time is the ancient evil god Tharizdun, who's been manipulating Wesley's old Deva. That was kind of the idea, but because of the sandbox nature of the campaign, the characters and the players exploring with the characters in different areas of the world, they started both story arcs at the same time and then didn't know where to go with them.
I would say, just because this is from stuff that you've told me in the past, but maybe even just sort of, I imagine it as volume dials on the campaign, dials to turn certain plot pieces up.
Yeah.
I think that you should, when you go back to this, sort of get that plot point and just turn that up in its volume. And
which one?
The Deva plotline, I think, should be turn the volume up on that one, so there's a bit more of a concentration of that filtering in, and that's a bigger piece of the story.
That's what I started to do before we sort of dropped off, and that was that I had these sightings of these cultists that were following them happening a lot more frequently. And then the next point was to have this new Dava contact Wesley, right? And that would then reveal that Joe was actually an Azamar, and maybe Wesley could realign to a new god if he wanted to, and become an awakened Azamar and not a fallen, and that kind of stuff. And that would be interesting character development. But the problem was, I felt like a lot of the campaign was just exposition. A lot of the storytelling was NPCs telling the characters things, and I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with that, you know.
It was not going through like actions being done. It was just a history lesson.
Yeah. So I think what I'd have to do is have Isa be contacted by this Dava and give them a quest to go and find something, like an ancient tome or something. And then they'd have to go on the quest to find it. Yeah, exactly. Aramin's Tome, which you can get on the Patreon of We Speak Common. They'd all become Patreon members. Yeah, exactly. And they'd go and do that and get information that way. But then that itself still it felt a lot like it was just find a book and read it and I'll tell you it, rather than discover it through finding ancient carvings in a wall. So maybe I think what I'd have to do. So I think if I was to say to the characters, the players, let's play Estoroth again. Here's what we're gonna do. I'd sit them down and I say, here's a refresher of everything that's happened so far, and I'd write that out.
Here's a little recap.
Yeah, and I'd do a recap for them. I'd make it fun. I'd tell them everything they need to know, and I'd sprinkle in bits of information in there that they should have got that I failed to give them in the right way.
Yes.
You know, so like if I wanted them to connect A and B to make C, but they'd in fact connected A and B to make fucking number 56, I would say I would make sure that I explicitly said, you found out this and this, which made you know this, and give them the correct information. And if they're like, I don't remember that, I'd be like, no, it's fine. You're not going to remember a lot of it. Some of this is retcon. I'll just be honest.
That's good.
You know? Then knowing that they're on the way to this tower, the idea of the tower is that it's the ancient tower of Castan the Old, who is he was the most intelligent of all of the archmages, the one that's now on Dragontooth Point, the Dragonborn. So they'd find a lot of information about Dragontooth Point there, and the idea was that there were ancient underground dungeons with magical sigils in them that hold the whole place. It's like an invisible field that dragons can't get out. It's like the reverse of the Dragon Ward around Waterdeep.
It's it's the hex.
Yeah.
For dragons.
Literally, yes. Spot on. So they'd find out a lot about that, and the idea was that if they wanted to free the dragons, they'd have to go and explore all of these temples and destroy the runes, and if they wanted to keep them locked down, they'd have to go and rebuild the rune. So, the one that's broken. Because that's how one dragon managed to get out, is that the rune was broken and they just fought through it. They were strong enough to get through it. So
who's breaking the runes, though?
Castan.
Oh.
Yeah. Because he basically, as a Dragonborn, felt an alliance with Dragonkin, and in his ancientness, because not only was he Dragonborn, he also turned himself into a lich, and through his study, found out the history of the dragons and the fight between the gods and House of Tories and all of this kind of stuff, which is Galahad's house. He decided that the only way... He wanted a world where dragons were he was like, dragons are beautiful creatures, they should have a place in our world, and we should find a way to allow them to live in our world with us and not fight, you know? Which is kind of flawed in itself because of the way dragons are. But he decided to do that. He gave up his freedom after he was shunned through the fact that necromancy became a school of magic you weren't allowed to study, and decided to go to Dragontooth Point and lock himself in there with the dragons and work on his research there alone. So he's full on a skeleton kind of thing. Like, he's been alive for a long time. So he's got to the point now where he's like, okay, I have enough knowledge and enough of my own argument to be able to go to the people of the continent and say, this is why you should allow dragons to come back. Let's break the ruins. We'll do it from the inside, and we'll come back. And if they don't accept us, then fuck it, we'll just kill them all. Because he's at the point where he's gone a little bit mad. He's been alive too long.
Literally.
Yeah, lich, really. So he that was awful. So
That was awful.
they'd find some information about Dragontooth Point and these runes that hold it together, like the origin of Dragontooth Point, basically, in this library that's been lost to time in this tower. So I could put any form of information there for them to pick up on. They've then got the subquest of we need to find Vidya, the drow, who we think is underground, and we know that there's a connection to the Underdeep beneath this, the Underdark beneath this tower. Let's go down. But we also know that Galahad had the image of a beholder down here, or what they think is a beholder. So let's go find out. And then they get the fun little encounter of dealing with a mind flayer colony that's at war with a beholder because they want the same space.
Which is great.
Which is really cool. So that would be like a bunch of sessions. There'd be like side quests where they don't progress the story. And maybe, I could put something in that library, or I could put something in the tombs underneath on like ancient drawings of the gods and things. And there's an elder brain down there that could have a bunch of information. But my problem is I feel like I'm just saying stuff to them, And I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or whether I'm being overly critical of myself.
It just from like my perspective as a baby DM and as like a player, compared to the stories you've put like me through, and stuff like that, it feels very congested and very, in a sense of like
it's convoluted.
There's a lot going on, so it's going to be hard, to pay attention to everything that's going on. So I think it's just to focus on that one thing, even if it means going, okay, well, the Deva was actually the thing that could, like, the being, even though I don't know how that works within your world, but the being that created the runes. So there's a little bit of like,
that works.
That there's a little bit of like drama there, and there's always. Now, this is a really cool option. There's always the option of them then siding with a bad guy to kill the bad guy.
Well, this is the thing,
team-ups.
Because it was the idea of the campaign, the theme was the morally grey area. They were never, whenever they decided something, they never felt overly great about it. There was always something that they were like, we don't want to do this one thing, but we kind of have to do it. Like, there was always a struggle. It was about the fact that everything was a duality. There was no one good thing and one bad thing. And that's why having a Deva and a Paladin really worked, because it's like, do I blindly follow the god that I believe, or do I renounce the gods because actually they're evil? But no one's truly evil, and that was kind of the point. So that would be great. I think what I'd have to do, and I think this is the lesson in this episode, it's a bit of a weird one, because it's hard to give tips to myself, and I think it's nice giving it to you and like hearing your thoughts back, is that I think I'd have to clarify what I'd done was I did that thing where all of the NPCs were fleshed out and they all had different ideals and beliefs, which is great, right? That's fantastic, except the players would go to the NPC for direction, and the NPC would say, this is the thing that is more important. You need to think about this. And they'd say, okay, but what about the dragons? And they'd go, yeah, that's important. That's a problem. But the convergence is more important. Okay, so go do that. But then they'd go and do something, and they'd meet another NPC that they trusted who would say the complete opposite because they had different ideals. So, yeah, it's a struggle. I think I'd have to pick one of the storylines I wanted to progress with straight away. So, like, I'd sit down and I'd go, okay, they're going to be at the tower. They're going to be at Tower of the Deep, which is quite close to Riverton. There's a strong chance that they'll go to Riverton after. So, do I want to progress the Rector Alliance storyline, or do I want to progress the Dragon storyline and send them down that path? And then once they've done that, lift up
that's what's good, though, about the way you've done it, is they all, in a sort of like triangulation situation, they all sort of affect each other.
Yeah, because if they go to the rector's town, his city, and they find out and they see that Darvish is actually the bad guy, and they do some investigating, and they find about the missing bodies, and they find like zombies wandering around at night or something, they start to put two and two together. That's what I'd do. I'd get them in the city. I'd make it a very kind of like noir kind of city. They'd see all these missing people posters. They'd investigate that. They'd find, maybe one night they find an abandoned building somewhere that's literally got some undead standing in it that aren't doing anything. They're just standing there, and it's one of the places he drags homeless people to and tests on. And they start to work out what's going on, give some hints that Darvish is not a good person. Like, because maybe in the city people whisper about, hey, no, Darvish is the one who's in control, actually. You know, hint all of that, and then they decide to overthrow him or confront him with it. In doing that, they've kind of ignored Dragontooth Point, which means that, oh, look, another dragon's appeared somewhere in the continent because one of the runes is broken.
Oh shit, dragons are breaking out. But yes, that is...
Yeah, but I kind of did that at the same time, you know? And that was my problem. I did too much in one go because I wanted to have this sandbox feel where they could go one session, they could be following one storyline, and the next session they could jump onto the other storyline without knowing it, and that was where things got convoluted and muddled. So I think even though I wanted this sandbox approach, I think the lesson here is...
And you are gonna get that moment of success where they've done that plot line and then, oh shit, there's that other problem of dragons still appearing.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
Exactly. So I think the lesson here is, instead of like, have your multiple plot lines for your sandbox, but instead of running them all together, give them a structured order. So yes, it's still going to feel like it's going to feel less sandbox in your brain as the DM because they have to go through this storyline, then this storyline. But it's not, because the players will decide which storyline they do first, and you swap around the order based on their actions, rather than have them both happen at the same time. I think that's the lesson.
Yeah, because if not, they're all going in different directions and you just get confused.
Which is what happened. We had this feeling of confusion and just like directionlessness, and that wasn't fun for me as the DM because it made me feel like I was failing, you know?
Yeah, and you don't want to feel like that. You want to feel like you're pointing them in the right direction and that all of the people are enjoying it.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, you almost want them to feel as well like they know what the plot's going to be. Maybe even like guessing it wrong, because even that in itself is like one of the core parts. It's like them guessing what the plot is in a way, in a sense.
Yeah, 100%. This has been kind of like a therapy session, like where I realise what's wrong with me by saying it out loud myself.
By saying it all out, you've worked out your own problems, and I've just sat here smiling the whole time.
Oh, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been fun.
It's been really interesting to hear, because it's just, you know, it's a similar problem to the one I was going through, and it's good to hear because I see you as like, oh, that's the sort of DM I want to be. But at the same time, it's really nice to hear, and it's probably nice for other people to hear, that you've had a situation where it's just gone wrong.
Yeah, I've had very similar issues.
It makes me go, oh, okay, I'm not that bad. We've all done it.
Yeah,
Which is just a nice feeling.
100%. I have, the last thing I want to end on is I found the story of how the previous rector died. Would you like to hear it?
I have to hear it.
The rector was challenged by an outsider. People say he came from a different realm. Cloaked, black, and hooded, the figure engaged the rector in a sword combat. They were evenly matched. It was after an hour, swords clashing, sweat dripping from their foreheads, that the first spells were slung. Never before had the rector's people seen firsthand the powers he had learnt from the Manger's council. After hours of fighting, the stranger was beaten. In a show of strength, he conceded in blocking a strike from the rector's sword, letting it impale him. Witnesses say he walked toward the rector, pushing the blade through himself, and whispered something in his ear as his body went limp. The body was burnt. No one found out who the stranger was. The rector had been injured greatly in the battle and died 2 weeks later in his bed, comforted by his son. So there's like a mystery there about who this person was and why the rector fought him.
I love a good mystery. I love it.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll find the time to write this out as a campaign setting.
Maybe. and
that would
they
be
can
fun.
get that through the Patreon.
They can, which there is a link to in the description of this episode below. Go and have a look. You get access to a bunch of extra stuff. The Sorcerer Rebuild class and currently Araman's Tome of Artifacts are the 2 bonuses that you get. You also get, of course, access to the We Speak Common Discord server. We were actually hanging out in earlier before we came to record and chatting away to people and doing D&D prep and stuff. So come and hang out with us there. There is a very, very small amount that you have to put in to join that Patreon and get all of those bonuses, and then the others have extra bonuses if you feel like you want to do that. Of course, if you don't want to do any of that, it's cool too. It's fine. It's just there if you want to toss a coin to your local podcast. Sam, I have no idea what I'm going to title this episode of Table Fables, but I feel like it's one where I've just kind of rabbled on for an hour and a half, so I hope that...
But
I hope
we've sort of come to the conclusion and solved the story, so that's sort of good.
That's true, and I feel like after our session together, when we looked at your podcast, your campaign, that I felt that we kind of rambled on for a long time and I wasn't sure what the benefit was going to be, and people said they got a lot from it, so I'm hoping this is that situation again where
I think there's a lot to get from it and a lot to learn.
At the very least,
at the very
least you get to hear about a brand new D&D world that you didn't know existed, and maybe that'll give you some inspiration for your own.
100%.
Cool.
I just like the convergence, man. That's great. Wow.
I'm do you know what? I really want to finish the storyline of the other characters, but at the same time, I can't because Joe is currently away, you know? So maybe one day we'll do a couple of, like, we'll do a mini campaign in Estoroth or something.
Oh,
that would be cool.
That would be a dream after all these legends.
I need to remake the map on Worldforge. Not Worldforge, what's it called? Wonder Draft. Worldforge is a friendly podcast that I know. Shout out to Worldforge. I need to remake the map on like Wonder Draft and make it proper, and maybe build out some other continents and just build out the world a bit more, and then we could play in it again.
Just have a bit of fun world building while Joe's away, and then he'll come back and he'll be like, "What the hell is this? What have you done with my beloved place?"
And I'll be like, "Dude, it's even better. Let's finish your story." And that will be his coming home present.
Yeah,
oh,
which
man.
he'll love. It'll be great. I can't
Okay.
wait to see it in fruition.
Yeah, me too. Oh, it's re-imbued me with enthusiasm about my old homebrew campaign. Oh, how nice! Yay!
You've got 5 campaign things to think about now.
I don't have the time. Okay. Thank you very much, Sam, for indulging me today. That was a lot of fun, and thank you for kind of taking the lead as the listener in this episode.
No problem. It's been loads of fun.
Nice one, dude. Well, let's leave it there and go and rest our brains for a bit.
Our elder brains, because it's resting at the moment actually in the corner of this room.
You should probably feed it. Maybe go and get a gnome or two and just drop them in there.
Well, I'm gonna go find Kiro. I'll see you when I see you.
See you later, dude.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today. If you like the show, do us a favour, leave us a like and review on your platform of choice, and share us with your friends. Send us to your fellow DMs and players so that we can build our community even more. It really helps to get us out in front of more eyes. If you want to support the show, you can by joining our Patreon. Links can be found in the show description and the episode descriptions on all platforms. The music in the podcast is Street Dancing by Timecrawler82. It's licensed under a Creative Commons license by NC. You can find it on the Free Music Archive.